Well, good evening, it's Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 23rd of November. Yep, just sitting here in a t-shirt. It is pretty chilly outside tonight, but I have the wood stove on, and I went into my living room and I checked the temperature, and it's a balmy 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a little hard to control wood stoves. You can get them too close, but there you go. This is going to seem like a government boondoggle evening. Okay, so first story here is a honking great ice rink that is being built outside of the House of Parliament in Ottawa, and basically it's going to cost $5.6 million to build this ice rink, and it will only be open for 26 days. Okay. There are 16 boys teams and 16 girls teams, these are hockey teams, to play on this ice pad, and after the 3 weeks it will be dismantled and taken to an area, a suburb that is maybe less fortunate, but the size of this rink, I think you'd have difficulty finding a location to actually rebuild this thing. And anyways, if you take a look at this next little piece, I'm offering an alternative which would save $5.6 million and highlight the University of Ottawa Sports Complex, which is very, very close to the House of Parliament, just about a kilometre and a half away, which could easily have been used. Now, as you can see, here's the Parliament of Canada up here, and you go just down this road. This is the University of Ottawa, and this is the Minto Sports Complex Fitness Centre. It is approximately 1.5 kilometres away from the Houses of Parliament. It has a full-size ice rink, and as I say, it's part of the University of Ottawa, and I'm sure it wouldn't have hurt to bring those hockey teams to this sports centre and highlight the University of Ottawa rather than the House of Parliament. How about that for a solution? Save yourself $5 million and maybe put that money towards low-income housing or people in communities that need some upgrades. How does that sound? Spendthrift government. You know, I'm just amazed at the amount of money that is wasted by government. And it might seem like I am just complaining all the time, but this is our hard-earned tax dollars being blown away on absolute nonsense. And then when we have, you know, how we're dealt with as the lower down people on the ladder, the economic ladder. And so what have we got to look forward to? Prepayment meters. And this was brought forward by New Democrat MPP Peter Tabuns, who's arguing against this. Now, what's going to happen is that people who are problem payers, which is seniors, people on pensions, fixed incomes, low income people, really the most vulnerable people in our society, and they're going to give them pay-as-you-go meters, and you'll be able to get some kind of a card at a variety store. You could possibly use your cell phone, download credits, or pay online to Hydro One. Now, what the concern is, that this will circumvent the legislation that stops Hydro from turning off your hydro in the wintertime. And Hydro said, well, we won't be turning hydro off in the wintertime, we will follow that legislation. But you see, because this is so craftily worded, and you probably find that I go on and on and on about the crafty words that we use in our society today, but there's a concern, you see, that it will circumvent that legislation that was brought in 2015 after 60,000 households were cut off in the middle of winter to freeze to death. Okay, and how can they circumvent this? Because if you're responsible for putting money in the meter, a prepaid meter, and you don't put the money in, then it's your fault that it got cut off, because the meter will just stop turning, and it won't be Hydro's fault. They can literally and legally say, we had nothing to do with this. I think these weasel words are absolutely scandalous, and again, whilst they're lining their pockets. And I might add, the CEO of Hydro, okay, the average wage for the CEOs of Hydro across Canada ranges between $300,000 and $400,000. And what does our lad in Ontario get? $4 million per annum. Well, I don't think he's going to have any problem paying his hydro bills, but he probably gets free hydro as one of the little perks of the job. I just love these studies, don't you? If you like Bieber's music, you might be a psycho. Whoa. Well, I wonder who else would be listening to Justin Bieber's music. Okay, so people who have a high level of psychopathy happen to like Bieber's What Do You Mean, Eminem's Lose Yourself, and Blackstreet's No Diggity. The psychopathic test subjects were not fans of My Sharona by The Knack or Money for Nothing by Dire Straits. Well, those are actually two of my favourite songs and two of my favourite bands. So you'll be thankful to know that I'm not a psychopath. They did add that Nicole Leal, a recent graduate of NYU and one of the study's authors, told Washington Post they weren't able to find a pattern in what songs would be popular or unpopular with people who score high on the psychopathy scale yet. So they put this little bleeb in here to get you going, but they actually haven't come up with all of the answers yet. So here is some more strangeness in the news. This comes from France, and for the first time, France mulls setting an age for sexual consent. And apparently, I didn't realise this, but France has never had an age for sexual consent, although it does say that if you have sex with a girl under the age of 15 and it is without coercion or violence, you can only be charged with sexual abuse, not with rape. And this comes out of a case where a 28-year-old man, is suspected of having sex with an 11-year-old girl, and whether he should be tried for sexual abuse instead of rape because of how the French law defines rape. Well, I think 13 years old is still awfully young. If you are a parent and you've raised children, as I have a daughter, and I can tell you at 13 years old, maybe she was physically ready to conceive children, let's put it that way. She certainly wasn't mentally ready to get involved sexually with somebody. The age of sexual consent across Canada is 16 years old, okay? And yet the age of majority is 18 and 19 across Canada, which means you can't drive, you can't drink, and you can't vote until you are either 18 or 19, reaching the age of majority. Now, if you are not able to decide who to vote for, how can you possibly decide whether you're going to have sex or not? So there's something wrong with that. Either we have to lower the age of majority to 16 or increase the age of sexual consent to 18. Either one. Personally, I'm not sure what the age of sexual consent should be in Canada, but it should certainly be somewhere between 16 and 18. 13 is definitely way too young in my estimation. Let me know what you think on that one. Now, I found this story kind of interesting, and this is US unveils new blood pressure criteria. And so they changed the blood pressure criteria, and so it's upped the number of people who are hypertensive in America from 32% to 46%. Okay, so that is a 14% increase of the number of people in America and probably Canada with hypertension. Now, they are suggesting that they try and control this with a change in lifestyle, exercise and diet and that kind of stuff. But you can't get people to do that now with the levels that you have. So why are we even changing the levels? And of course, we all know what this is going to lead to. is that people will start to worry and doctors will start to prescribe medication because people just don't like to exercise enough, I'm afraid. So it's an interesting way to increase the number of drugs sold. I have a customer coming to my store who is a borderline diabetic, and he goes in on a regular basis to get his blood checked to see whether he meets the criteria of being a diabetic. And every time he goes in, the nurse says he's getting a little closer because they keep changing that criteria of what it means to be a diabetic. And I don't know why they just can't set a level and stick with it. It just seems to me very arbitrary to be moving these things up and down and changing them, and always the net result is that you're going to end up taking more medication to resolve the issue. Oh yes, more money in the bank for Big Pharma. Now I like this one. CRA blocks calls and gives wrong information. The CRA is the Canada Revenue Agency, which is the Canadian equivalent of the IRS. So it turns out in an audit that the Canada Revenue Agency blocks 50% of the calls it receives, and it gives wrong answers 1/3 of the time. Now this leads to people filling out their tax returns incorrectly, possibly missing out on rebates or calculating the income tax that they owe incorrectly. But blocking 50% of the calls, are you kidding me? These people are paid a tidy sum of money to work for the Canadian government, and to be blocking 50% of the calls is absolutely outrageous. And then to give you wrong answers when they do finally pick up the phone, again, is completely unbelievable and completely unacceptable. I don't quite know how we got to this, and of course they do internal audits, but unfortunately people tend to recognize the voices of the callers because they work in the same department, or they recognize the phone number that it's coming in from, and so it's not really what you call a fair audit. And so again, we're paying big bucks for the poorest service that we can possibly get. Now this next story I just love. This is thank me very much for my service. Okay, so Canadian senators, and I should just explain first of all again for my American listeners that the Canadian Senate is a little different from the American Senate. Our Senate is by appointment and not by election, and basically they really don't have any power. They can have a vote on issues that are put before them, but they can be overruled by the current Parliament, sitting Parliament, if they have a majority. Okay, so what had happened was the senator spent $225,000 to buy 1,500 medals, and this gave them 12 medals to each of the 93 sitting members to give to people who have worked hard in their communities, made contributions, unsung heroes, people that generally go unnoticed, according to Conservative Senator David Wells, who spearheaded the medal effort. But there is also a medal for any senator who wants one as recognition of their contribution to parliamentary debate over the last 150 years. 47 senators took those medals to pat themselves on the back. But this is on top of, let me see, at least 47 senators took up the offer and are presumably no longer blue about the fact that the only other compensation they receive for their sacrifice is the guaranteed indexed annual salary of $145,000 they will get until they turn 75, their generous pension, and their $150,000 in annual office expenses, their $22,000 in annual living expenses in Ottawa if they happen to be from outside the national capital region, and most of them are, and the free travel they get for themselves and their spouses. Nothing like a bronze medal to round that one out, eh? And of course this comes on top of a scandal that we had last year and this, with senators who were lying about their permanent places of residence. And of course, unfortunately, we don't seem to get around to having an elected Senate and a representative Senate and a Senate that has a binding vote. Okay, I think we would be much better with an elected Senate rather than an appointed Senate, because you don't get this kind of patronage and sanctimonious backpatting and backslapping and this kind of stuff taking place. I mean, it is so pompous, it is beyond belief, as if these people don't get enough as it is. So verdict in gas plant trial expected in New Year. I've reported on this before, and these are two people, David Livingstone and Laura Miller. So these two were senior aides in the Premier's office during the time of the Oakville gas plant scandal, in which the government paid $1.1 billion to cancel contracts that they had entered into to build 2 gas plants in Oakville. Okay, so the trial has gone on. They wiped the hard drives. Laura Miller's partner here came in. He's a computer specialist, and he wiped all of the hard drives in the Premier's office. There was some 620,000 emails that were wanted by the OPP, that's the Ontario Provincial Police, in an investigation into wrongdoing. Okay, now these two have pleaded not guilty. They've already dropped some of the charges, but the question still remains, and I think it will remain unanswered, is why 2 people who worked in the Premier's office would, of their own volition, suddenly decide to up and wipe the hard drives of 620,000 emails. They're saying that these had nothing to do with the gas plant scandal, but we will never know that. But I seriously cannot believe, I mean, is somebody going to tell me, you know, if you worked in a company, in a large corporation, no matter how senior you are, I mean, say you're an assistant to the CEO, you are just going to decide on your own that those hard drives need to be wiped, right? No, not ask any permission, not go and seek out any advice on this. Just by yourself, up and do that. And nobody's going to question that. Give me a break. Give your head a shake. Because if you believe that, oh boy, have I got a bridge for you to buy. It's a great deal. And we're going to round out this segment with a piece by Mad Max Hughes. And here he is. And here is his rocket. And he is going to prove that flat Earth theory is correct. This is a steam-driven rocket. He has done this once before, which was a bit of a disaster. And anyway, he's going to fly over the Mojave Desert, and this will take place on Saturday of this week, which will be the 25th of November. And he is going to prove that the Earth is flat. Well, good luck, because if you think the Earth is flat, maybe you listen to Justin Bieber music, because I mean, there are so many ways of disproving flat Earth theory. It is unbelievable. And of course, you know, why would all of the other planets in the sky, including our star, be orbs? Okay, we have satellites orbiting the sun, either side, taking photographs of the sun 24/7. Okay, I believe it's called the Helio viewer, and you can't do that on a flat disk. So why would the Earth be flat and all the other planets be globes or spherical? Also, if you do a little bit of research on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, the uprights are slightly pointed out to compensate for the curvature of the Earth. If you're a sniper, you know, these long distance army snipers, you know, firing a kilometer or over, they have to compensate for the rotation of the Earth. And of course, you know, you can simply prove this to yourselves by sitting on a roundabout, having somebody opposite you, so your legs are facing into the center, and roll a ball to each other. Okay, and you'll find that as you try and get that in a straight line, that ball is going to curve off to one side or the other, depending on the direction in which you're rotating. And of course, why is it that when you're walking along a seemingly flat road, things that you couldn't see in the distance rise up out of the ground, become large as life, and then as you go past them, they disappear back into the ground? That just simply would not happen on a flat earth. So I am going to be very interested to see what happens. He had a GoPro camera stuck on the back of the last rocket that he flew, which was a bit of a disaster. He basically went straight up and straight down. Now Mad Mike obviously wasn't killed in that crash as he landed, but a lot of debris came off the back of the spaceship and ripped several large holes in the parachute, and he came down a little quicker than he expected, and he was pulled from the wreckage with cuts and bruises and a concussion, I believe. So we're going to wait and see what happens to Mad Mike Hughes on Saturday, and I'll probably bring you a little update on that. Okay, so this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, and some of the news items that I thought were interesting this week, and I'm going to try and bring you another video over the weekend. I think I may do a vlog. I'm thinking that I would like to just do a bit of an introduction as to who I am and why I'm sitting here behind a camera talking into the virtual world. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe below. Click that little bell so you'll get all of the updates as they come along. And, well, you have a great evening, and we'll talk very soon. You take care now. See ya.